Alright, so with Zenless Zone Zero version 2.0, we are going to get the first rerun for Astra Yao, and she is still the best support in the game right now. So today, I want to first give a quick recap as to what she does and what she offers to players, and then I'm going to go into whether or not players should invest in her, both for new players who don't have her, as well as for people who already pulled her and may want to invest further with some extra mindscapes or her W engine. So Astra Yao is an ether support character, and the biggest part of her kit is her idyllic cadenza state. This is going to be the majority of her gameplay, and it's going to provide a lot of really cool buffs for your characters. So you're pretty much going to want to enter this state all the time by using her special attack, her EX special, her chain attack, or her ultimate. And with this state, she can permanently stay quote unquote off field once you activate it. And what I mean by this is this state doesn't have like an end time. So when you activate it, you can just swap Astra Yao off and you'll still kind of see her like singing on the field, but she won't actually be able to take damage or anything like that. And when Idyllic Cadenza is up, all allies are going to get a 20% damage buff and a 25% crit damage buff, which is very nice for pretty much any kind of DPS for the standard like attack type DPSs. But then when you get to her core passive, she also does have a benefit for anomaly centric DPSs as well, which is that she's going to be able to give up to a 1200 attack buff based on her own initial attack for herself and the incoming character whenever a character swaps in from an assist or chain attack, as well as anytime Astra consumes energy to release her little like tremolo attacks, which are basically follow-up attacks from some of her skills, which obviously aren't going to do a crazy amount of damage because she is a support, but is a little extra here and there as just like an added bonus with her. So that is the main info for the Idyllic Cadenza state. Otherwise for her kit, she does have a lot of ways to trigger quick assists throughout her kit, which is also very good, and also to trigger quick assists while other allies are on the field, because that is where you're going to get the most value out of her, because you do want to activate that 1200 attack buff as much as possible. Also, it's important to note that her ultimate has two very important mechanics. The first one is that it does have some team-wide healing, which is an extremely rare ability in Zenless Zone Zero. A lot of the time it's about playing well around enemies or just having good defensive characters to keep your team alive. But healing is a very nice thing to have, especially if you get caught off guard sometimes, because it happens. Not everyone's going to be like a super sweat who knows every single boss pattern. And the other important thing for the ult is that the next two quick assists that activate after Astra Yao ults are going to be converted into chain attack. So if you have characters that benefit from their chain attack, this is going to be very good as well. So those are the main parts of how Astra Yao works. So quickly, just to touch on how good I think she is, I definitely think she is still the very best support in the game. She does have some pretty insane uptime for her buffs, for attack, damage, and crit damage. She's very easy to use as well because you pretty much just have to use her skill at the start of battle and then you can just swap her out, which is super nice to where you don't have to worry about weaving in a support like you do for other characters. She kind of just gets her buffs off and you're good there until you get her ultimate up, and in that case you kind of just chain attack into her and then you ultimate there, which is super nice. And it is nice that she has the extra utility with the extra heal as well, which again, healers are very far and few between in this game. So it is very nice for Astra Yao to have that in her kit as well, especially as a support too, giving her a bit more utility in comparison to other characters. So now let's talk about whether or not you should be pulling for this rerun banner. Starting with the first time pullers, if you're a new player or if you just didn't get Astra Yao when her banner was out, I think she is a great option for a lot of characters. She has a very universal additional ability, because right now it works as long as you have an attack or anomaly character on the team, but with 2.0 they're also going to be adding Rupture to this as well, meaning that she's also going to work with Ishuan if you are going to be pulling for her too. And another really good thing about Astra Yao is that she's a very good character at M0, meaning that she's a character where you don't have to feel like you have to pull the W engine or you have to pull Mindscapes for her to be a really good character. She's still going to perform extremely well at M0, no signature W engine. So That is also very good if you maybe want to go heavier on Yixuan for 2.0 and then just pick up an Astra at the end. That is absolutely something you can do and still have some very solid performance for her. But the one thing I will say about Astra Yao is that while she is the best support character, there's not really many places where she's necessary. I think the only character that really like super wants her is probably Evelyn. But that's really just because a lot of the team comps in Zenless right now, they do have other supports that, while in totality are not as good as Astra, they mesh better with certain teams. So while Astra can work in a lot of situations, there are going to be characters that are more tailor-made for those situations that are probably going to be better overall. But I do like having Astra, at least in my experience, for the flexibility, because especially in something like Deadly Assault where you do need to have 3 teams, having Astra to just slot in on a team is always nice to get that very solid amount of support. So that's how I feel for newer players there. I think flexibility is the main benefit you're going to get out of Astra, especially if you do already have some other support characters for some other types of comps. So now let's talk about vertical investment for people who already have Astra Yao, or if you're a first time puller that wants to get more investment right off the bat. Now, I think her M1 is way beyond her W engine in terms of overall value, and this is not just because of how good M1 is, which we'll talk about in a moment here, but it's also because in comparison to other characters who have a pretty solid gap between their signature W engine and other alternatives, Astra Yao's alternatives are actually very competitive with her W engine. So it's not necessarily something that you feel like you'll need to have with her, especially as a support. So she does get a lot more value out of the M1. So let's talk about what it does here. So with M1, whenever Astra hits an enemy, they're going to get a 6% all-type res debuff for 30 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times, and this is super important because as Astra triggers those tremolos in her kit, that's going to be activating this all-type res debuff. So she can even apply this when she's off-field, but she's going to be off-field the majority of the fight as well. Also with M1, she's going to gain 1000 decibels at the start of combat, meaning that you're going to get her ult even faster. And whenever Astra uses her ultimate, all allies are going to gain the Song of Protection effect for 60 seconds. And whenever the allies get hit while they have Song of Protection, they'll consume it to get 1 second of iframes, which is super nice, honestly, if you're getting caught off guard, or if there's just an enemy that's hitting a lot of times, because we do have some more of those now in the game, which it can definitely be good for players who just obviously aren't like super sweats or have all like the attack patterns down. So this is also a very good effect here. Now, in comparison to her signature W engine, with the W engine, after any ally switches in using any kind of assist, the wearer is going to gain 5 energy, and this can trigger once every 5 seconds. Also, anytime the wearer consumes 25 or more energy, all allies will deal 10% more damage for 20 seconds, and this can stack up to 2 times as well, giving the team a nice extra damage boost. But with comparing this to all that you get for the M1 there, especially with the res debuff that lasts longer, and also the extra decibels, the M1 is going to have way more value than the W engine here. So then for the final part of this video, I want to talk about the other sort of notable mindscapes, and for this I really want to just focus in on where she's getting more support capabilities, and really the only other mindscape that's going to give that is M2. So Astra's M2 increases the maximum of the attack buff by her core passive to 1400 as opposed to 1200, and the amount that you have for the buff is increased by 19% as well. So you're going to get even more out of the core passive. And anytime she's in the idyllic cadenza state, she's going to launch additional tremolo and tone clusters anytime allies swap in the assists, and this can occur once every 3 seconds, which is really nice because you're going to be triggering a lot of quick assists with her, meaning that you're going to get more of the M1's all-type res debuff, making that have a pretty high uptime, if not just straight up permanent. And that is overall a pretty solid mindscape. And now the reason I said that only M1 and M2 were mainly support oriented is that while M4 and M6 do have some interesting increases for Astra Yao, they don't feel as valuable in terms of overall support. They're more so giving Astra Yao herself some extra stuff and not rather the entire team. So I think for getting Astra Yao, especially since she is going to be used as a support and kind of off-field support as well, I think that M1 and M2, if you are going for mindscapes, are probably the most important. And then after M2, I would say W engine goes right after that. to give her as much as possible for support if you're going the extra mile to get some extra investment. But as I said earlier, even Astra at M0 is still a very powerful character. So that is everything for me about Astra Yao. I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments down below. But with that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.